Imagine this: a hushed phone call, a nervous coffee meeting, or a casual remark at a family dinner. Someone you deeply care about, a friend, a sibling, a parent, looks you in the eye and asks for money. In that instant, time seems to slow down. It's not just a request for cash, it's a direct appeal to your loyalty, your generosity, and perhaps even your deepest fears. You want to help, desperately, but a quiet voice whispers a warning: this could change everything. Welcome to the invisible minefield of lending money to loved ones, a scenario so psychologically charged, it can unravel the strongest bonds and leave scars deeper than any financial loss. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on this profound dilemma, exploring the unseen emotional currents, the hidden power plays, and the surprising truths about human behavior that emerge when money enters the sacred space of personal relationships. Prepare to understand the psychology behind why this act can be so fraught, and how to navigate it without losing your peace of mind or the people you love. At its core, money isn't just a medium of exchange, it's a powerful symbol. Psychologically, it represents security, freedom, value, and even love. When we lend money, especially to a loved one, we're not just transferring funds, we're also transferring a piece of that symbolism. This act can be seen as an expression of trust and care. However, it can also become a test of perceived value, a source of control, or an unexpected burden. Understanding these underlying symbolic meanings is the first step to navigating the psychological landscape of lending. Our brains, despite our best intentions, are often susceptible to various cognitive biases that can severely cloud our judgment when a loved one asks for a loan. One of the most prevalent is the optimism bias, where we tend to overestimate the likelihood of positive outcomes. We think, "Oh, surely they'll pay me back. Their family, they wouldn't do that to me." This leads us to downplay the very real risks. Closely related is the planning fallacy, which makes us underestimate the time and resources it will truly take for the borrower to get back on their feet and repay the loan. They say, "I'll pay you back next month," and we believe it, failing to account for unforeseen complications or their own struggles with financial planning. Another powerful bias at play is confirmation bias. Once we lean towards wanting to help, we subconsciously seek out information that confirms our desire to lend, while actively ignoring or rationalizing away any red flags. We might recall past times they were responsible, even if their current financial situation is dire. This mental blind spot can make us less objective, pushing us towards decisions that aren't truly in our best interest or even the borrower's long-term well-being. These biases often set the stage for future disappointment and conflict, even before the money changes hands. Money is intrinsically linked to power and control in human relationships. When you lend money, even with the purest intentions, you inevitably shift the power dynamic. The lender, however subtly, gains a form of leverage or authority. The borrower, in turn, becomes indebted, creating a psychological obligation that can feel burdensome. This imbalance can manifest as resentment in the borrower, who might feel infantilized, patronized, or trapped by the debt. Conversely, the lender might develop a subtle sense of superiority or even entitlement, feeling justified in asking intrusive questions about the borrower's spending or financial habits. This unequal footing gradually erodes the foundation of an equal, reciprocal relationship, making comfortable, natural interactions difficult. The emotional fallout of lending money can be significant, affecting both the lender and the borrower. For the lender, the act can be fraught with guilt if you say no, especially if the person is genuinely struggling. If you say yes, you might carry an unspoken obligation to monitor the repayment progress or a simmering resentment if payments are delayed, partial, or forgotten. This resentment can fester, leading to passive-aggressive comments, silent judgment, or outright emotional distance. It's a heavy burden to carry, affecting your peace of mind. For the borrower, the experience can be equally, if not more, psychologically taxing. They might feel intense shame and guilt for having to ask for money in the first place, which can erode their self-esteem. This is often followed by immense obligation to repay quickly, leading to significant stress and anxiety. If they can't repay on time, the shame intensifies, often leading them to avoid the lender entirely, thus damaging the relationship. Paradoxically, they might even develop resentment towards the lender for the pressure or perceived judgment, especially if they feel misunderstood or unjustly hounded. This complex interplay of emotions often leads to a cycle of avoidance and tension that can become incredibly destructive to the relationship. The psychological baggage around money is amplified when it enters the intimate space of friendships and family ties. These relationships are typically built on emotional capital, shared history, and unconditional support, elements that money can complicate, distort, or even destroy. The very nature of these bonds, which often prioritize emotional connection over transactional clarity, makes financial agreements particularly perilous. Friendships, for instance, thrive on a sense of equality and mutual respect. When money is introduced as a loan, that equality is immediately challenged. The borrower might feel inferior or embarrassed, while the lender might feel superior or burdened by the unspoken responsibility. If the loan isn't repaid, the friendship can devolve into a silent battleground of unspoken accusations, avoidance, and passive-aggressive behavior. Common social interactions, like going out to dinner or sharing leisure activities, can become uncomfortable, as the shadow of the outstanding debt looms over every shared moment. A friendship that once brought joy can quickly become a significant source of stress and resentment for both parties. Family relationships, on the other hand, come with a lifetime of shared history, deep-seated emotional patterns, and often a complex web of unspoken rules and expectations. Money can become intensely tangled with these dynamics, especially if there's a historical pattern where one family member is consistently the responsible one and another the needy one. A loan can reinforce these long-standing roles or trigger long-held resentments from childhood. For instance, if a parent lends money to an adult child, it can unconsciously reinforce feelings of dependency or parental control. If a sibling lends to another, it might dredge up old sibling rivalries, feelings of perceived unfairness, or unresolved childhood issues related to favoritism. The emotional stakes are incredibly high in family contexts because these ties are often seen as unconditional, making financial disagreements particularly painful and difficult to resolve without lasting damage to the core family unit. Let's consider common real-world scenarios that illustrate these dynamics. Think of the conveniently forgotten loan. You lent money for a temporary emergency to a longtime friend or relative years ago. Now, they seem to be doing fine, perhaps even boasting about new purchases or trips, but your money is never mentioned. The relationship continues, but a tiny, unspoken crack, a seed of resentment and distrust, has been planted. You might find yourself subtly avoiding them or feeling a pang of anger every time they talk about their new acquisitions, leading to an insidious erosion of genuine connection. Then there's the situation with the entitled relative, who might say something like, "You have it, why can't you just help me out?" There's a strong sense of entitlement based on kinship, making refusal incredibly difficult due to the psychological pressure, and acceptance incredibly frustrating for the lender. If you do lend, you might feel taken advantage of, while they might feel it was simply their right to receive it. Or imagine the failed business venture. A friend or family member asks for a loan to start a business. You believe in their dream, so you lend the money. But if the business fails, how do you emotionally separate the financial loss from the disappointment and grief over your friend's failed dream? This blurs the lines between helping a loved one and engaging in a high-risk financial venture, often leading to deep disappointment and a broken bond, where financial and emotional investments become indistinguishable. These scenarios vividly demonstrate that the personal relationship is almost always more at risk than the money itself. the emotional cost can far outweigh the financial loss. The most crucial psychological tool in navigating the complexities of lending money is the strategic and compassionate establishment of clear boundaries. This isn't an act of selfishness, it's an act of profound self-respect and, ironically, a vital step in preserving the health and integrity of your relationships. Without clear boundaries, expectations become ambiguous, resentment builds, and relationships inevitably suffer from the emotional strain. Even without a formal, legally binding document, every interaction, especially one involving money, carries an implicit, psychological contract. When it comes to a loan, it's absolutely essential to make that contract explicit. Beyond just the amount and repayment schedule, delve into the softer, often unsaid, aspects. How might this loan impact our relationship? What's the plan if you encounter unforeseen difficulties and can't repay on time? What are my expectations regarding communication if problems arise, and what are yours? Being upfront about these questions, however uncomfortable they may feel initially, prevents future misunderstandings, reduces anxiety for both parties, and minimizes the breeding ground for resentment. It transforms a potentially ambiguous favor into a clear, mutually understood agreement, fostering psychological safety. Learning to say no to a loan request is often far harder than saying yes, but it's frequently the healthier and more loving option for both parties involved. Saying no can trigger deep-seated guilt or a fear of disappointing someone we care about. We might worry about being seen as unsupportive or selfish. However, refusing a loan that you can't genuinely afford to lose, or that your intuition tells you is a bad idea, is an act of profound self-respect. More importantly, it's also an act of respect for the other person, preventing you from enabling potentially destructive financial patterns and ultimately safeguarding their own long-term well-being by encouraging self-reliance. Psychologist Dr. Henry Cloud, a leading expert on boundaries, emphasizes that boundaries define us. They define what is me and what is not me. He argues that healthy boundaries are not walls to keep people out but rather fences that define where one person's responsibilities and resources end, and another's begin. This clarity is essential for fostering genuinely healthy and respectful relationships. When it comes to money, saying no clearly establishes that your financial resources are yours to manage, distinct from the other person's needs or perceived entitlements. It's crucial to understand that declining a loan request is not about rejecting the person themselves, but about declining a specific request that might be harmful to your well-being or the overall health of the relationship. It's an act of emotional maturity. Arm yourself with gentle but firm responses when saying, "No, I understand you're in a tough spot, and I genuinely wish I could help directly with a loan, but I'm just not in a position to do that right now." Simple, direct, and avoids over-explanation or unnecessary excuses. I've made a personal rule not to lend money to friends or family. It's important to me because I value our relationship too much to risk it over finances. This puts the boundary on a principled stance, rather than a personal judgment of their situation, making it less confrontational. My current financial situation doesn't allow me to lend anything at the moment. However, I'd be happy to help you explore other options, such as, suggest looking at resources, budgeting assistance, etc. Offers alternative support without committing to a loan, showing care without financial risk. Remember, true compassion doesn't always have to be equated with cash. Often, other forms of support can be far more valuable, sustainable, and carry fewer psychological risks to the relationship than a direct monetary loan. It's about meeting their needs effectively, not just fulfilling a request. If you are in a financial position to give money without any expectation of repayment, and you genuinely wish to do so, consider framing it explicitly as a gift. Psychologically, a gift removes all pressure and obligation from the recipient. They feel genuine gratitude, not indebtedness or shame. The giver feels generous and avoids the pitfalls of potential resentment or disappointment because the money is released without strings. This distinction is crucial for preserving the integrity and emotional purity of the relationship. Be unequivocally clear, here's $X. This is a gift, not a loan. There's no need to pay me back. This sets a clear emotional boundary and prevents future misunderstandings, fostering a psychologically healthier exchange. Often, what people truly need is more than just money. They need guidance, resources, or practical assistance that empowers them in the long run. Instead of a loan, you might offer, "I can't lend you money, but I'd be happy to help you update your resume and search for job openings," or, "Let's sit down together and look at your budget. Perhaps we can identify some areas where you can cut expenses or find new income streams." You could also suggest, "I know a great nonprofit organization that helps with rent assistance or utility bills. I can help you find their contact information and application details." This approach shifts the focus from a temporary financial bailout to empowering them with sustainable solutions and building their self-sufficiency. True compassion often involves helping someone develop the skills and resources to help themselves in the long run. This could manifest in various ways: offering temporary housing, providing transportation to interviews, sharing meals, offering to babysit so they can work, or simply being a non-judgmental listening ear and providing emotional support. This kind of help builds capability, resilience, and self-reliance, which are far more valuable and enduring than a temporary cash infusion that might mask underlying issues. It invests in their future growth and independence, not just their immediate crisis. Despite all the psychological warnings and potential complexities, there might indeed be times when you genuinely decide that lending money is the most appropriate and compassionate path forward. If that's the case, it's imperative to do so strategically and with full psychological awareness to minimize risks and protect the relationship. A critical psychological strategy, even when you intend to be repaid, is to approach the loan with the mindset that you are emotionally prepared to lose this money. This doesn't mean you expect to lose it, but preparing for that possibility shields you from devastating emotional blowback and resentment if things go wrong. Mentally categorizing the money as a gift, even if it's technically a loan, reduces the psychological burden on you, the lender. If you get it back, that's a bonus, a pleasant surprise. If not, you've already mentally processed the loss, allowing you to maintain your peace of mind and potentially preserve the relationship. This approach reduces the emotional stakes for you. Formalizing the agreement, even with close family or friends, is paramount for psychological clarity. This isn't about distrust, it's about mutual respect and clear expectations. Your agreement should clearly state the exact amount, the repayment schedule, specific dates and amounts, whether interest will be charged, and if not, explicitly state 0% interest and a brief outline of what happens if a payment is missed. Both parties should sign and keep a copy. A written agreement depersonalizes future conversations about the loan. If a payment is missed, you can refer to the agreement. "Remember we agreed to X on date? What happened?" This transforms a potentially awkward accusation into a neutral, business-like discussion. It creates a shared, objective understanding of expectations, significantly reducing the ambiguity that is a primary psychological trigger for resentment in these situations. Be precise about what specific event or date will trigger repayment. Is it when they get their next paycheck? When they sell a particular asset? When they complete a project? Specificity helps both parties manage expectations and reduces anxiety. Also, proactively discuss contingencies up front. If you find yourself unable to pay on time, what's our plan B? Should we adjust the schedule? This proactive discussion preempts awkwardness and shows you're prepared for potential challenges, not just optimistically assuming everything will go smoothly. It also empowers the borrower to communicate issues openly rather than hiding them out of shame or fear of confrontation. The unfortunate and often painful reality is that sometimes, despite all best intentions and planning, loans to friends and family aren't repaid. This is where the true psychological test of the lender, and the relationship, begins. The way you navigate this non-repayment can define the future of your bond. When a loan goes sour, a heavy psychological silence often descends upon the relationship. The borrower might start avoiding you out of intense shame, guilt, or embarrassment over their inability to repay. You, as the lender, might start avoiding them out of anger, frustration, or a desire to escape an uncomfortable confrontation. This mutual avoidance creates a psychological elephant in the room that poisons the relationship, making genuine connection and comfortable interaction impossible. The pain of this avoidance and the breakdown of open communication are often far more damaging to the emotional fabric of the relationship than the actual financial loss. If non-repayment occurs, initiating a calm and direct conversation is crucial for psychological resolution. Start respectfully. "Hey, I wanted to check in about the loan we discussed. The payment for, amount, was due on, date. Is everything okay?" Using "we discussed" or "the agreement" keeps the tone neutral and factual, avoiding immediate accusation. Then, listen actively, give them space to explain their situation without interruption or judgment. Are they genuinely struggling, or are there underlying behavioral issues? Understanding their perspective, even if you don't agree, is key to moving forward. Express your feelings, without blame use statements. "I'm feeling a bit stressed because I was counting on that money by X date," rather than, "you made me stressed." Finally, propose solutions, focus on finding a path forward. "Can we work out a new payment plan that's more manageable for you?" Or, "Would it help if I connected you to X financial resource or job opportunity?" This is often the hardest and most agonizing part for the lender. If multiple attempts to recover the loan fail, and the emotional toll on you becomes too great, leading to constant stress, resentment, or preoccupation, you might have to make a profound choice. Is the money worth more than the relationship, or your peace of mind? Sometimes, the most psychologically healthy and ultimately beneficial choice for your own well-being is to write off the debt. This means consciously and emotionally letting go of the expectation of repayment and the resentment that inevitably comes with holding on to it. This act of letting go aligns with psychological principles of acceptance and emotional detachment. Holding on to anger and grievance only harms you in the long run. If you choose to write it off, consider explicitly communicating this to the borrower: "I'm letting go of this debt. I don't want it to come between us or cause further strain in our relationship." This act, if truly genuine and free of hidden resentment or passive aggression, can be incredibly liberating for both parties, allowing the relationship to heal and move forward. It becomes a psychological gift of peace, but one you actively choose to give at a financial cost. Ultimately, the complex journey through lending and borrowing illuminates a deeper, fundamental truth about financial independence and mutual respect in our relationships. It teaches us about our own boundaries and the capacity for growth in others. A core tenet of psychological well-being and personal growth is taking personal responsibility. While helping others is commendable and often necessary, consistently bailing someone out financially can inadvertently prevent them from learning vital financial lessons, developing their own resilience, and taking ownership of their circumstances. From a psychological perspective, true support involves empowering them to stand on their own feet, not just providing a temporary crutch that fosters dependency. Encouraging self-reliance in those we care about aligns with fostering genuine growth and maturity. It's about building their capacity to navigate life's challenges independently, rather than creating a cycle of dependency where they always look to you for solutions. This doesn't mean abandoning them, but rather guiding them toward sustainable solutions that build their confidence and capability. Healthy relationships are indeed built on reciprocity, but this doesn't, and shouldn't, be limited to financial exchange. Relationships thrive on mutual emotional support, shared experiences, deep trust, unwavering loyalty, and genuine care. By thoughtfully navigating money issues, and sometimes opting not to lend, we can preserve and strengthen these non-monetary forms of reciprocity that are far more valuable and enduring than any temporary loan. The true wealth of a relationship lies in its emotional and spiritual capital, not its financial transactions.